Hey guys, welcome back. Thought I would do something a little bit different this time and do a voiceover. I recorded a video of me baking, just one of the things that I like to do to fill my time right now. So I just figured I would let that play in the background and kind of talk through treatment so far and talk about my most recent meeting with my oncologist and my surgeon. I'm about 3 weeks into treatment for triple negative breast cancer and I'm 30, so enjoy! I had spoken a little bit about starting immunotherapy, which hasn't quite happened for me yet, but hopefully either this week or next week. I've been approved to be part of Keytruda's ongoing clinical trials, but I think they're near the end. They're close to provincial approval, so yay! So as far as chemotherapy, I am on carboplatin as well as paclitaxel. So I go in every week to get paclitaxel and then I get carboplatin every 3 weeks. So far, chemo has been okay. The symptoms are pretty well managed. As far as nausea and vomiting, they are very wonderful in regards to prescription medication as needed that helps manage that. Other things that have been kind of bothering me are the mouth sores, but mostly it's just been the fatigue. I could sleep forever. I feel like I think my anxiety is the only thing that fuels me on some days. But I've been trying to get out for a walk every day, and I've been doing about 30 to 40 minutes of yoga every day. So I've just been trying to kind of maintain the same, if not just a little bit less of the level of activity that I had before. So going into chemo and, well, I guess going into cancer, it had been a few months before the cancer was diagnosed that I had started to, not really have the energy for exercising as much as I used to, but close to the end of 2021, I was still doing about 5 to 6 times a week of spin for about an hour and a half at a time. And then prior to that, I was doing about 5 to 6 days of heavy lifting at the gym. So I definitely have a history of being active, and I worked as a kinesiologist, just a single one. I worked as a kinesiologist both in Ontario and BC, so I definitely have some experience in regards to not only exercise and exercise prescription, but also kind of into the back end of chronic pain. So I've had the pleasure of doing quite a few courses in chronic pain hosted by LifeMark when I worked for them. And, I think a lot of this information has been super helpful to me in my journey so far. It's definitely made the medical part less hard to navigate and also has helped inform a lot of my questions. As far as my level of activity before cancer, I was working out about 5 to 6 times a week for probably the last 10 years pretty consistently. I firmly believe that my consistency with exercise not only helped save my life, but also increases my response to chemo and my tolerance to chemo. So when I was going to school and getting my degree in kinesiology, it was a pretty widely held belief or theory at the time that delayed onset muscle soreness, so the 24 to 48 hours after exercise where your muscles hurt, was caused by lactic acid buildup, which I'm sure most people have heard. But there has been obviously ongoing and new studies coming out that suggest that delayed onset muscle soreness is actually an inflammatory response in the muscle, and that the body's immune system responds to manage that. And essentially your delayed onset muscle soreness just gets better with time, like you don't get sore with exercise because that immune response becomes so good, right? It's practice makes perfect, right? So the more you do it, the better it gets. It definitely feels like having spent, the 10 years before cancer exercising 5 to 6 times a week, like I've been training for this my whole life, right? So chemo is an inflammatory, treatment. Every time you get chemotherapy for 2 days afterwards, you're meant to flush twice after every movement, bowel or bladder. And if you were to be sick to your stomach and someone is helping you clean it up, it's recommended that they wear gloves, just because as the drugs pass through your system and into your, excrement of any sort, those drugs are irritating. So even for myself, I got a bum rash from my pee, and that is just kind of the way the cookie crumbles insofar as chemotherapy. So it is an inflammatory response is happening in my body. The rest of my immune system kind of has to kick in and protect the rest of my healthy cells, while my cancer cell eats doo-doo and kicks rocks. But yeah, I have, at the beginning, it felt a bit like, how could this happen to me? I've spent my whole life exercising and eating healthy and tracking macros and whatever. But at the same time now, it feels like, life is random and random things happen to us, and it's just about how we deal with them. And I had the good fortune of dealing with this sooner rather than later. I have plenty of harebrained theories also in regards to the cancer. Maybe this cancer, so I found my lump in 2021. Maybe that lump was trying to develop into cancer, but my immune system is strong enough that it kept fighting off any tumor that tried to develop until it developed into triple negative, which is the most aggressive as well as the rarest form of cancer in the breast. So I figured it would be useful to talk a little bit about chronic pain, just because it's something that is anticipated to come up for me in regards to breast cancer and treatment with cancer. It's kind of a given for most people who experience cancer. There's been a lot more kind of stuff like chronic pain, stuff that can't necessarily have a label like cancer or a treatment like cancer put on it since COVID as well. So essentially, there's a couple of different ways that chronic pain works. Some of them are psychological and some of them are physiological. So these explanations, I'm definitely not an expert. I had the good fortune of working for Lifemark, who hosted quite a few experts on chronic pain and quite a few discussions on chronic pain. They were constantly having, people come in and voluntary courses and things like that to sign up for. So I've definitely taken some more interesting courses on the topic, but I would definitely not say that I'm an expert. So take this information with a grain of salt, and hopefully it's, useful to you in any way. But a really good way of describing it, how it's been described to me as well, is if you think of a grassy field and you're standing on one side and the bus stop is on the other, you have to walk around the field on the sidewalk to get to the bus stop. So what this would normally be is, if you think about your brain as the bus stop and yourself as a motor neuron or something, like a muscle in your hand, let's say. So normally if you want to move your hand, the little person would walk around the grass, go to the bus stop, let them know, bus stop, they would walk back to you and let the hand know that it should move. Obviously this happens really quickly. I'm over here, I don't know if you watched my last video, I'm waving my hands all the time, that stuff is happening. Those messages are being sent back and forth. The problem that happens is when there is trauma or an event or like a moment of increased intense pain receptors, right? So think about if you were to touch a stove. When you put your hand down on the stove, you don't even have time to register. Is it hot? Is it, is it grainy under my fingers? Is it whatever? Your hand immediately yoinks back, right? And that is essentially what happens is that little person, instead of walking along the sidewalk, they cut right through the grass to the bus stop, and from the bus stop cut right back to the hand. So let's say that the hand is taking some time to heal for whatever reason. Maybe you are in cancer, you're immunocompromised or whatever, and every cut, nick, whatever takes way too long to heal. So let's say that over time, suddenly someone is walking across this field more often than they should be. So then you get a path coming through this field, right? Kind of like when kids cross your lawn in the same spot every day and then you don't have grass on that part of your lawn. I'm sure my dad can relate. But so what happens is, yeah, those signals start to cross through that grassy knoll. But the problem is when signals are crossing through that grassy field, they're being prioritized as, emergency signals, high priority signals. So that's the physiological piece that happens. They even see when you have, I feel like this might be a little bit too sciencey, but essentially as signals pass from like kind of up the nerves, they're let out. If you think of your nerves, they kind of look like trees with roots. So one tree lets out a signal and the next tree picks it up, travels along, lets it out the top of its tree, the next tree's roots pick it up, etc., 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 all the way up to your brain. So they have even shown in studies that when one tree lets go of signals and the next tree is trying to pick them up, that those trees actually become very sensitive to pain signals. So let's say your hand is healing, those signals are very good at picking up only pain, and they're using the shortcut to your brain to register heightened pain. So a lot of times, even when the hand has healed, we can still feel pain because I use like and kind of to not commit to any ideas. I'm sorry about that. But what happens is you've gotten really good at registering pain in this particular center. Obviously with cancer, I'm assuming there are some other factors at play. Maybe chemotherapy or immunotherapy might affect, the way the nerves work or what have you. But that's kind of a general understanding of the physiological pieces of chronic pain. And, if your doctor tells you it's all in your head, kind of, but also not really, because it's in your head, but in a scientific way, if you will. Obviously, chronic pain is physiological, but chronic pain has a huge psychological piece to it as well. Not only on the effect it has on your quality of life, obviously, but just on proliferating that feeling. So I was in a really interesting class once with someone who was an expert in chronic pain. I forget the gentleman's name, but he talked about meditation and meditation around chronic pain. And the class specifically was about chronic back pain, and he had a client come in who pictured his spine as kind of like a sad, broken sapling. And part of his take home was to meditate and to picture his back growing into like a really big, strong tree. And, this is a client that had great success with the program that he was put on, which was mostly just meditation and exercise. So it's a lot of info just to hear that you're not alone and you'll be okay. So as far as my personal journey goes, I had a follow-up with both my surgeon and my oncologist today, so 3 weeks into treatment. My surgeon reviewed my medical imaging with me. So prior to starting chemo, I had an MRI, a CT scan, and a PET scan. The MRI showed some indication of the left breast having a suspicious growth. So I've been recommended for a follow-up for an ultrasound. I mean, obviously at this point I've already started chemo, so even if there was like a dusting of cancer in the left breast at this point, I'm assuming it would probably have been, taken care of with the chemo. So even then, they're rushing the ultrasound just because they want to catch it before it's gone, just to keep tabs on it. And then the CT scan showed involvement of or maybe the opposite, I'm not really sure. One scan showed something, one scan showed the other, who really knows? But they showed quite a bit of involvement between the muscle walls, so that would be the pectoral muscle, and then also the chest wall. So it's grown into the wall protecting the lungs, which is a bit, concerning. And I do remember trying to do a spin class about a month before my diagnosis, and I was gassed. So, I'm feeling a little bit better about my cardio these days, knowing that. The last test that I had, so the PET scan had shown that the first lymph node had some involvement, and when I had an ultrasound, they were also concerned about the first lymph node, so they biopsied it. But the biopsy has come back negative, that there is no cancer in the lymph node. However, the PET scan shows that there's activity happening in the lymph node. So my oncologist and my surgeon are in disagreement about the official, unofficial lymph node diagnosis. So my oncologist has named it as N1 disease, and then my surgeon has decided to treat it as N0, so that there's no cancer activity. That doesn't make much difference for me in terms of treatment, but considering that, I was, first of all, holy frick, if I had heard that this breast cancer was like metastatic, at that point, I don't even know what the treatment really looks like. That's incurable, right? So just feeling very relieved that I got treatment when I did. I'm feeling very relieved that I started chemo. I'm feeling very relieved that my chemo is working. When I saw my oncologist today, she did a tactile exam, and I was 8 centimeters about 4 weeks ago, and I'm down to 4 by 4, which is insane. Some people don't react to chemo at all. Some people don't react to chemo well. I have had such few side effects, and the tumor itself has reacted so well, and I really think this is a huge reflection of my lifestyle prior to cancer and prior to chemo. Exercising. I counted my macros just because out of a hobby thing, but overall I ate a very balanced diet. I ate, like a ton of veg and different colors, and I tried to eat seasonally and what have you. So at the end of the day, yes, why me? But also life is random. Dumb stuff happens to good people, and you just kind of have to deal with it. If I have any advice to anybody with or without cancer, it's honestly exercise. Not exercise in the sense that oh yeah, but I walk a lot and I carry dishes at work because I'm a server. I mean exercise like a designated amount of time in your day to do something very specific, whether it's yoga, spin, I feel like walking, jogging, whatever counts as well. But if I can give any piece of advice, it would be to start exercising yesterday. Find something you like to do, find something that brings you joy, find something you can do alone or with people, whatever suits you. But if I have one message for today, absolutely. And I never thought I would be this person, but absolutely exercise. So we're just nearing up the end here. I had initially planned for this batter to be made into sugar cookies, but I ended up making these little kind of sugar bars that we had cut into small squares because my appetite is a bit low these days, so I feel that I'm eating much more often, but just smaller snacks all the time. I've been making this coffee with protein powder, which I highly recommend, has also been helping me get enough in every day. And yeah, other than that, just kind of trucking through chemo, trying to get immunotherapy started, and just doing what my doctors tell me to do. Thank you again so much for watching, whether you're back, whether you're new. If you're here because triple negative has affected you or someone you love, I'm so sorry, but thanks for being here anyways.